we did for 3 years, we had those numbers which were just our NSSE numbers without doing anything. And then in 2010 we did the survey again with our fingers crossed that we'd see some numbers move because now we saw things happening. So we breathed a little sigh of relief because we saw for our first year benchmarks there was a slight improvement in all our benchmarks. So again, it's not huge, but when we talk to NSSE, even getting any improvement is hard. So the blue is the 2010 data, the red is the 2007 data, and this yellow, green, lime green is all the Canadian schools who participated that year. So again, we're not so much worrying about what the other schools are doing, because you can see in some of them, yes, we're outperforming, sometimes we're underperforming, so we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to worry about ourselves. We're looking at year to year. So we saw in our first year, we improved in all of them somewhat. Senior year, we improved on several of them, but not all of them. So in this effective educational one, we dropped a little bit. So we're kind of scratching our heads on that one. But all the others are all up. So 9 out of 10 is not too bad. That we saw improvement, statistically measured improvement. Just to give you some examples of what we provide to the faculties now. So this is for computer science faculty. When we give them their data, we break out, part of my job is that we go through, say, the 41 questions that are in the benchmarks, look at each question, give distributions for each of those questions, and then give them back the data. So now we're building up a bit of data, so these, yes, it's a lot of columns. So the first column is that faculty for 2010, the same faculty in 2007, university as a whole in 2010. And the senior year students in 2010, the same faculty students in 2007, senior year, and then the university. So what we're looking for is looking for change. So in this case, and I truly just picked this one at random, so the question was, in the current school year, how often have you asked questions in class, contributed to class discussions? Well, we can see here, the often and very often, so the two greens are often and very often, it's gone from 23% to 36%. Okay. And with the senior year cohort, it's gone from 34% to 51%. And to be fair to computer science, they've actively targeted some of these questions, and they're seeing results. So we find we're learning much more now. And why they tackled them? Because they were below the university average. So even though they've improved, they're not necessarily significantly better than the university as a whole. Right? So here's 2010 first year, here's university as a whole, basically it's a wash. Here's 2010, here's university as a whole, basically it's a wash. And actually they're on the very often a little bit behind. So they, from that view on that question, they know they got work to do, but the improvement is, you know, where they can say, okay, it's worth it. They're seeing improvement between their 3 years. And then sometimes it gets pretty busy. So it's probably the busy slide. This is one of the more eye-opening ones. So this question is, it's a time on task question. How many hours are students doing homework, right? And it's defined as studying, reading, writing, doing homework, analyzing data, and so on. And I've stacked them so you can get an idea. It's probably no surprise to you that you're going to find the bulk of students are doing, in this case, 15 hours of homework or less. Okay, most faculty seem to think it should be 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 to classroom hours to homework hours. Well, this is not. Now, this is also not different than the Canadian average, and it's not different than the American average. So we're finding on the time on task, we're just falling right in line with everybody else, but it's less than maybe some faculty's expectations. I should say certainly less than their expectations, but maybe even less than what they think is actually going to happen. So again, we look at the comparisons, and so this is a bit worrying for this is now gone to business. We're seeing now we have fewer students. We have, I should say, more students spending less time, or however you want to put that. So they're kind of not wondering what happened here. How come all of a sudden the students said they decided to do less homework? The reason I brought that up with them is because there was a discussion on the business faculty. They're looking at changing on the curriculum, and a lot of people worry, oh, students have no time. Well, they've got lots of time, so they're not doing a lot of homework. So there was a worry with some faculty, oh, we can't keep giving them homework because they don't have time. What we're learning from NSSE is they've got lots of time. Yeah, there is a minority of students who are doing a lot of homework, like this yellow bar, which is 30 hours of homework or more. But you can see we have no business students doing that. And 5% of the university as a whole in the first year. In our senior cohort, we actually see that. We have 10% of our business students doing 30 hours or more of homework, but they're still below the university average. So again, you can take what you want from it, but we look at something like that and say, okay, there's opportunities here to maybe move more of the digesting of the content outside the classroom hours and do more of the teaching and learning in the classroom. Some other things, this is a busy slide, but we looked at 2010 first year's data versus 2007, trying to look at some things that jumped out. A lot of things didn't change. So some ones that, for instance, 2/3 of our students said, now answered very much the question, how do they think UNB is emphasizing helping you cope with your non-academic responsibilities. So between 2010 and 2007, 67% more students now saying very much. Talking about, does UNB encourage students of different ethnic, economic, social backgrounds? Well, now more than 1/3 of students are saying very much, compared to 2007. We've doubled the number of students who say they're doing pages of 20 pages or more, papers of 20 pages or more, overall, okay, so not in all faculties. And more than half the students think that UNB is doing more now. They're saying very much, providing support means thrive socially. So again, when you look at each of the questions, you find some interesting stuff. So a lot of questions there's no change, but these are some of the ones where there's a big change. We also found decreases as well. So working on projects during class, we're seeing fewer students saying very often. Students tutoring or fewer students say they're doing tutoring. This one's very, very surprising. Fewer students saying very often they're using the internet. I still haven't quite got my head around how that could possibly be true. This one was a bit disturbing to us. We thought we were trying to emphasize from Teaching Learning Center, faculty talk to their students about career plans and finding actually fewer of our students saying very often it's happening. So that's a bit of a red flag for us. Same here, this is a student faculty interaction question. Talk about, you discuss readings from your class with your faculty. We're seeing on a whole with our first year cohort, 11% fewer are doing it. So yeah, we've improved, but we're realizing, okay, in some areas we haven't improved. We did a study last summer. David Latour was a graduate student at UNB, was graduate now. And for his master's project or paper, he did a project on persistence. So one of the things he did, and it was the first time we took NSSE data and mirrored it or tied it in with registrar's data. Because the NSSE data has student numbers, when you get to your NSSE data, we started using those student numbers to compare to some of the data that was in the registrar's database and then trying to pull together some tables. So this is an experiment for us. The focus was on persistence because that's a big focus in any school in the Maritimes now. So the things that they found which aren't surprising, just using the data we had, is students who are taking more courses, who get better grades, tend to are more likely to come back next year. One thing we found interesting, which the literature backs, is students who live in residence are more likely to come back. And then we saw, when I showed that slide earlier, we find that if they stay in residence for their 4th year, they're real keeners. But we're finding just any student, if they live in residence, are more likely to come back next year, which is a challenge because at UB anyways, the number of students in residence keeps dropping every year. More and more students want to move off campus and live in apartments. And fewer students want to have a roommate, right? So everybody wants a super single, nobody wants to share. So you look on campus, we have one new residence, which is apartment style, it's always full. They've closed some of the other residences. One of them is converted into a student health center because students don't want to share rooms. Yet, those students who live in residence are more likely to stick around. So this is what for Dave Latour was a big thing. And then the thing that came out of nowhere, which I hadn't even thought about, the students who did the survey, as opposed to not doing the survey, were more likely to come back. So in his data, it jumped out at him as an indicator that if they do the survey, they're more likely to come back, so they're more engaged. And we hadn't even thought of using, we look at the data, we hadn't even thought about the fact whether they do it or not. So those 38% of students who did the survey, because 30% of our cohort did the survey, are more likely to come back next year than those who didn't.